It is time to engage. Welcome. We are talking about Picard, Episode 4, Absolute Candor, which, I gotta say, surprised me in a lot of ways. Some of them good, some of them completely terrible. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys about this. Okay. Let's make the first thing about this repeated beat at the beginning of this episode, where we go back 13 or 14 years to see a version of Picard that looks 20 years older than Nemesis.
Right.
How did you feel, again, being handed this look at Picard, where we're like, okay, he looks precisely the same as he does now, 14 years ago. Poise?
Can we forgive that? I mean, I'm okay with it.
Vanya?
I can live with it. Man.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was just more concerned about another flashback than I was about how I was just kind of like.
But the competence of the flashback?
Yeah, I was just kind of like, past it.
Okay.
Flashbacked out.
Can we, because we have to keep going because of all the stuff that we didn't know during the time that we haven't seen Picard. Mm-hmm. It's like we have to keep going back, and I'm like, how many times do we need to go back? 14 years. Anyway. I
think if they hadn't done exactly the same thing to establish a character that we were going to need for this show in the previous episode, I would have been cool with it this time.
Right.
Because if you go back to introduce me to a kid that was basically not alive during Nemesis, there's a reason for that. And I can buy it. But I honestly feel like having to see Raffi 14 years ago in the very previous episode, and then doing it again here, this is starting to feel like a rather dull Knights of the Round Table, where we're like, now we'll introduce you to this character who will be a member of this crew. And
do you know what I would have liked?
Like
an entire episode where they speak about that attack. Just the whole episode is just
about Mars, and then it's done.
It's about Mars, and then it's done. We can move on. It's the whole thing instead of peace here and the zap. We don't need that.
Or do all those kinds of flashbacks in one episode. Do like the Raffi and the kid and kind of get it all out so that we're not like again 14 years, or make it at least a different time, like a little bit different. Yeah, because stagger it a little bit.
Again, the thing that happens just before the intro, which makes this part what's called the cold open. The thing that happens just before the theme song is, Mars was attacked?
Yeah.
And you're like, okay.
Basically.
Now, basically 3 episodes are all about how now we're going to go, Mars was attacked. Now we're going to go into
because even the call, when he gets called away from Vashti, it's the same. For the same reason. So we just keep hammering the same reason, and we're like, we all know now, we're on the same page. Trust us.
Yeah.
As the audience. Well, I get it. Mars.
Yeah.
14 years ago.
And I gotta say, that is one of my biggest problems with this episode. There's so much repetition in this. And again, I don't know how someone who writes television would waste this much time.
This is Frakes' first episode.
This is Frakes' first episode, hence my excitement. But I gotta say, I'm not super duper jazzed about some of the work he does.
He did some of Discovery, right?
He did some Discovery.
Season 2?
Both seasons.
Yeah.
Both seasons.
Yeah. Frakes is
like
an accomplished Trek director.
I love him.
Yeah, I want some more other Trek directors to come in.
I want Robert Duncan McNeil in there.
Yeah,
I want
Nicholas Meyer.
Roxanne.
Nicholas Meyer. Wrath of Khan.
We can do something better with him. He should make a show.
Blana's.
Roxanne.
Undiscovered Country.
Dawson?
Yeah, Roxanne Dawson.
Yes.
She's a very accomplished television director.
Yeah.
And LeVar Burton. That would be, come on, let's mix it up.
Yeah, and also, why not have Belena Torres in this show? Anyway, moving on.
Right? Or, Paris. But I guess if you're looking for people of color, then
bring her in.
Great.
So, I like this idea of absolute candor. I think it's a fantastic, antithesis to what Romulan treachery is all about.
It's another Romulan layer of something that we didn't know about.
Wonderful.
Now we're learning another thing about
I'm
that.
very into it.
I love that.
I like that they're building on this people we already know.
Yeah.
And I like that there's this
or that we don't know. These people that we don't know.
That there's this group of warrior samurai nuns.
They're like Bene Gesserit from Dune.
Yeah, they're very Bene Gesserit.
Yeah.
And the thing that bugs me a little bit about this is that of all the opportunities to put a awesome female character onto this team, they picked the one male that they've ever had, and I'm a little disappointed that we didn't have some kind of ass-kicking female Romulan warrior.
But we had that with Dodge, right? So maybe...
they went to all the effort to make this an ass-kicking female Romulan samurai.
Yeah, and then we get the
and
man.
we get the boy. Right. Not that I don't mind Elnor. I think he's an adorable character.
Yeah.
But I feel like any of them would have been.
Yeah, I feel like, and you could have also had a young girl that was an
Just as
orphan
fun.
Who became one of them, who bonded with him.
And maybe she's a northerner and then shouldn't be there. Like, there's all kinds of reasons for that.
Or she's just out of place.
Yeah.
And then ends up being one of them, and then he bonds with her, and then comes back and gets
You know
her.
what Elnor reminds me of? Legolas.
Yes. Also,
Yeah.
the fact that he's not named Elrond. It's so close. He's got long hair,
And
he's
that
got pointy ears.
And that their space looks like Rivendell.
Yeah.
All like the
All the trees. And,
Totally
all
Legolas.
soft color.
he's totally just an
He's
elf.
an elf.
warrior.
He's an elf. That's what's going on there.
But I mean, I'm into the character. I
Yes.
am just a bit disappointed that this was a great bullseye for making a cool female character, and it's a dude.
Yes.
And the Quowat Milat, I think, is a neat bridge back to Vulcan culture. This idea of Vulcans cannot lie,
Right.
and that of course Romulans would hate a group of people who are not treacherous.
Right.
And so it's a neat sort of, and there are parts of this episode that makes me think the people who are writing it don't know dick about Star Trek, but there's this little moment makes me look into and maybe read into it a little more and think, hey, maybe they're doing the Vulcan Romulan unification thing here with this Quowat Milat group. It was a neat thing to go down, I thought.
Yeah.
And now, Vanya, what did you think about the thing that bonds Elnor and Picard being swordplay? Was that enjoyable for you? Was it
I liked it.
Nostalgic throwback?
Yeah, it's nice to see him, do that, because when in Iborg he's fencing with I almost said Whoopi Goldberg, which is true, but
Yeah.
Guinan.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of nice to see him with a hobby that he clearly cares about, and he cares about doing with people that he really has an affinity for.
Yeah.
So for him to be doing something with Guinan, who we know is like one of his closest people to him, and then doing that with him, Elnor is really sweet.
Yeah, especially considering the fact that, Picard lost his nephew.
That's right.
And he never really had that relationship play out on screen the way that it might have. Does this feel like a surrogate for his nephew?
Yeah, what was it? I forgot their names. Jesus.
Was it Renee?
I mentioned Renee and
Robert was
Robert
his brother.
was his brother.
Right.
Yeah, with the really big bottom lip.
Right. Well, I mean,
I like
first of all, we know how Picard feels about kids. Right? He's never felt comfortable around them. And so I think it's kind of cool that he has something a little bit like a ward, or like a son in this one, right? You could argue that with the Inner Light, which we mentioned before, that he actually did have a son.
Yeah, true.
He had an entire lifetime of a son.
Children.
Well, and I wonder
Children and a daughter.
if we track Picard's character, does he dislike children until the Inner Light, and then after the Inner
would be
Light,
interesting. I wonder.
have a different opinion? I wonder.
Yeah.
Go back and watch, because that's season what? 5. Season Inner Light is season.
It's late, yeah.
Season 5. Yeah.
Season 5. So maybe it'd be interesting to see what happens after that. How he relates to younger people.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And maybe that's why he hangs on to the Captain Picard day sign after all.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't make me cry.
So now I want to talk about this Romulan dreamboat brother that seems to be falling for Soji. On this, I got really bored of the artifact storyline, the Soji storyline in this episode.
It's disappointing. Sorry.
No, tell me all about it.
It's disappointing because in episode 3, it was so exciting.
Yeah.
All of a sudden we had Hugh, we had Ramda, and that kind of storytelling. We learned more about the Romulans, and then all of a sudden it's back to this. And you know what? In some ways it makes a lot of sense because he's supposed to be a distraction to her.
Right.
And so you're kind of like, well, you're not paying attention. You're not getting things done because every time he comes around.
Well, and she doesn't seem to be noticing that he never answers her questions.
It's unbelievable, for somebody so intelligent to never pay attention unless she's just like, I really care about your privacy.
What if it's also the fact that we've never felt comfortable with romance in Star Trek?
What do you mean?
I think there could be an undercurrent of that.
No, I
in
think
Star Trek shows or Star Trek movies, I've never really felt
really great romance.
It's been Picard and Data, and it's been Worf and some other.
But it's also been Worf and Troy, and
Dax,
and it's been Riker and Troy. Like there are great loves in Star Trek. Look at the love between Beverly Crusher and Jean-Luc Picard. Which was
never really.
Yeah, but that's kind of what made it hot.
Right, yeah, because you don't want to bring that right away. Like, you want to, will they, won't they, like, has been, like, around in television forever.
Yeah.
And so I feel, I kind of
Could you argue that Star Trek is not really about...
I don't think it's about that with this, because this is a deceptive relationship.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of reminiscent of, like, Ash and Michael, in that regard. But, like, so maybe we're just uncomfortable when people aren't telling them the truth.
Yeah, maybe that's it. We just don't like romance with Romulans.
Could be that.
Not good, guys.
In darkened rooms,
Well, I want to talk a little bit about Elnor and this idea of this vicious, deadly Romulan who is so sweet and lovely. Like, what a sweetheart. The guy takes a senator's head clean off.
That's pretty cool.
But I feel like it's the kind of character, it's a very Drax kind of character where he sort of doesn't understand certain things, but he's there for one singular purpose.
That's right.
And he's also funny.
Yes. He's a good character.
Yeah, he's fun.
There could be... I hope they don't waste him, because they can do a lot with that character.
Mm-hmm. But it's almost like he also has a sort of a stunted growth to some degree.
Yep.
It's like he has the killing machine aspect of it down, but there's an emotional development side, which has been sort of limited a little bit.
And hopefully spending time with a father figure will somehow awaken a part of him that maybe those nuns were not equipped to do.
Yeah, because I feel like maybe that's... Well, they weren't ready to take care of a boy.
Yeah.
He's like Paul Atreides. And then, and then also the fact that there is like probably a maternal thing happening with him where, they probably rallied around him more like moms. Yeah. Like he's like had like a bunch of moms as opposed to, somebody that is like going to push him,
Well, and certainly a bunch of moms who aren't going to, they're not going to beat around the bush about anything.
That's true.
You're fat. Come on.
Now, I want to talk about this senator that gets his head separated from him, because I feel like we have met a lot of Romulans in Star Trek. And we met Romulans who were involved in the Senate as recently as Star Trek Nemesis. Dina Meyer, for example, is an actress that you could bring on and have her represent the Senate as it would have been 6 years after Nemesis. And instead, we once again get a character we have never met who tells us a long-ass story about himself that the audience knows intimately. We have heard for 3 episodes about all the shit that went down with the Romulans. And now we are sitting here listening to it again. Is this Michael Chabon being a novelist instead of tightening this up for television? Because I felt like we got so much repetition.
You're right, because you're as you said, it happened a number of times in this episode. And then we've experienced it in like the previous episode too. I feel like it might be he has a case of the J.K. Rowling's, where it's like sometimes, like that's why novelists have editors, right?
Yeah.
And it's a little different. This medium is different for him, and I feel like there are times where he's excelling, definitely in this medium, but he's also holding on to some of the old habits of being a novelist, I think.
Yeah.
And it's like showing,
I think so, and I think the fact that the editor is the one who gets to tell you that you should probably lose this and lose that. When you're the showrunner, you're the one in charge of whether this writer is writing too fat or that writer is writing too fat. And he's not trimming anywhere here. In fact, there was a scene in this episode where Picard sits down with that badass nun, and this is Jonathan Frakes' fault as well. They sit down and talk for a long-ass time in a set. It's this shot, then that shot, then this shot, then that shot. Then, in the very next scene, Picard and Elnor sit down and have exactly the same conversation about exactly the same things with the same shots. It was the most boring thing to watch.
So do you think that is a showrunner thing, a writer thing?
That's a perfect storm of
Yeah,
a writer who's allowing
everything.
2 scenes that are identical to happen back to back, and a director who's allowing 2 scenes that are written identically to then be directed identically. And if you're doing some kind of brilliant mirror thing...
Yeah, if they were intercut, like the conversations were intercut.
Yeah,
or
we've
something
seen
like
that happen before.
I mean, they've been doing that when they
When they
shouldn't be doing it. They've been doing it when we don't need it. When it doesn't make sense, that's when they do it. But then in a situation like that, where it would pick up the pace, they didn't do it.
Yeah,
which is baffling to me.
Yeah, this episode, like across the board, felt like an hour of wasted time. All they did was pick up Elnor. All they did.
Yeah, because I kept trying to figure out what happened.
We didn't learn anything. Yeah, we didn't learn anything new about the story or about characters that we're going to see again necessarily. We just beheaded a guy who had a lovely soliloquy. Like, that guy's not coming back. So what characters are we developing? What is the point?
Yeah,
of much
because
of
there
this?
wasn't much development even with who else is it with. There wasn't any more development with Raffi. There wasn't any.
Nope.
There wasn't any more development with Agnes or.
Well,
or,
we did get to meet a new emergency hologram.
Yes.
We got to meet the Spanish-speaking tactical hologram. Long hair, just sitting there, angry the whole time.
I love the Spanish because I feel like if your mother tongue, you would think quicker with your mother tongue, so it makes sense that
the tactical officer is going to be fast.
You know, because he's Spanish. You know, that would he would be able to he won't have to kind of translate it in his head, and I thought that was a good call on that part.
Now, I do need to bitch about this fight scene, this space battle, because, guys, in the history of Star Trek, there is one model, one specific class of ship that there has been a big stink, a big story about the fact that it does not have warp drive. The first time you see the Romulan warbird, the plot is about the fact that it does not have warp drive. And in this episode, the very first thing we see this antique Romulan warbird do is warp into the shot. Guys, this just makes me think none of these writers give a shit. It makes me think they do not care to know, and that nobody in that room is paying attention to the details. You can go ahead and make a science fiction story and make it up as you go along. Or you can show up and tell the 780th hour of Star Trek. But if you're going to do that, you have a responsibility. And they are completely removing that responsibility.
Unless they were like...
To be fair...
Oh.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, unless they were like, oh, they have warp drive now. But they didn't
You gotta
explain
tell me
it.
that.
Then you have to explain it.
So
then just
this
use
is
a
the
different
wrong
ship.
ship. You
know
show
what I
up
mean?
with a cool, like, a D7, saying that it's a classic
like-
Romulan D7, because, you know,
So
there
somebody
was a
someone has to say that then.
Yeah.
What? How is this happening? They're not supposed to have warp
Or
drive.
just give
Someone
me-
has to say it.
Or just give me a new warbird.
Or just,
But I think,
or just
to be
something
fair,
new.
devil's advocate is, I don't think it would be sustainable to have a ship that doesn't have warp drive. Otherwise, people would just gang up on you and
Then
just
use a
blow
different-
the shit out of
But
you.
then
wrong
use a
ship.
different ship,
Yeah.
is what Matt's saying is like,
Right.
then if you're going to tell this story and you have all this information at your fingertips, use a different ship or have an explanation. That is going to matter later.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. In order to make efficient television, Michael, you need every single thing that's happening to be important.
Yeah.
It can't just be, I'm going to burn 45 minutes of time and then an episode will be
Right,
done.
because it's like you want those beats to be tight because you only have so many episodes.
You got 10
of time.
hours and we're done.
Yeah, less, right? In some
Yeah, because they're
episodes.
45-minute stories. Yeah.
And so it's kind of like anytime they do this, anytime there's repetition, every time something doesn't actually matter to the overall picture, you're messing up.
Yep.
You know, there are shows out there that do this, that fill every minute, everything that every character says, every scene that's set matters, and there's no fat. It already exists. Like, we've seen this.
And one thing that really chaps my ass is that Star Trek has been a proving ground for so many brilliant showrunners. Ronald D. Moore and Brian Fuller are
Right.
two of the most sought-after, brilliant
Yes.
showrunners, and Star Trek made them. And we have an excellent novelist who's in charge of this season.
Yes.
And in almost every episode, there's something that doesn't friggin' work for Star Trek.
Yeah.
And you could have had a Fuller or a Moore in charge of this show. If you paid them to do it, they'd do it.
Yeah.
And instead, you're bringing on people who aren't as familiar with Star Trek.
It's like in their freshman... It's okay to be in your freshman year, but then you have to...
Surround yourself with the right people.
Surround yourself with the people that are going to tell you no or tell you that things need to change until you learn all the ropes.
In season 4 of Enterprise, Manny Cotto, this was the first season he was going to be running. He brought on the Rhys Stevenses to write episodes of Star Trek. These are Star Trek novelists who know everything there is to know about Star Trek lore. If you don't have people like that in the room, and if you don't have a showrunner like that, or at least someone whose job it is to read every script and tell you when you're wrong, you are going to make mistakes like this. And you're serving an audience that CBS All Access needs to love it in order to have a business model.
Yeah.
Guys, you got the wrong people in charge.
My concern when this kind of thing happens is that they already have season 2 set to go, and will they learn anything from this season? Because they already have season 2 coming in the bag. You know, I hope they pay attention to their mistakes.
I agree. Now, I'd like to talk about the fact that we had an interesting cameo in the last few seconds of this episode. Jerry Ryan is back as 7 of 9. Poise, was it a surprise? Did you know that this was coming? What did you think?
Well, we did know it was coming because of all the previews we've seen. I mean, she's popped up in quite a few of them. I figured it would have to be somebody that we'd known already. I wasn't sure if it would be Riker or if it would be... But somebody that we knew would have come on board that ship. I felt we'd seen a lot of these new characters. All right, you already... How many episodes in? 3, 4?
Yeah, this is our 4th episode, and we've got Hugh. Is about the only other person.
So it's like, all right, well, now we got to start bringing some of these folks in. So yeah, I figured it was somebody we knew, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that it was Jerry. I like the fact that this is beginning to look a little bit like a sort of a catch-all for all of Star Trek. So, I mean, you have DS9 characters being mentioned. Didn't somebody say Professor Quark? Did we hear that in an episode?
Did we?
No.
I think I heard that.
I mean, maybe he's teaching mixology at Starfleet.
I'm sure I heard Professor Quark somewhere.
I know what you're talking about. Quark is mentioned.
It's mentioned one episode ago, 2 episodes ago.
Yeah, I don't know what episode, but it's about, I think it's about trade or something.
Yeah. But I like the fact that they can go anywhere. Voyager, DS9.
And they have the freedom to do that.
But they don't do it enough.
Yeah. If you're going to tell a story with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of awesome characters whose actors are still alive.
Yes.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
Well, then would it be right to call the show Picard? I mean, it seems so...
It wraps around it.
Would you call it Star Trek Stuff?
Star Trek Everybody? I would rather be watching Star Trek Everybody, if I'm being honest. Now, on this topic, I want to talk about whether this episode felt like Star Trek to you. We're out of the 2-episode, 3-episode weird pilot, and now we're into telling a story. And this actually did feel like a beginning, middle, and end to meet a character. I hope we don't continue doing this, because if we spend the next 7 episodes meeting characters and assembling a crew, this is going to be very boring.
I mean, it's very frustrating. I find I feel like you need to set those in the pilot. Like, just let's pull everybody together real quick.
Yeah, we have an experience in Star Trek of seeing everybody on the bridge and not knowing who most of them are.
It doesn't have to be everybody. I feel like it should be most people, though.
No, it should be
in the pilot.
It should be everyone in the pilot.
Yep.
They're all on the bridge, and a lot of them are going to be strangers. And 3 of them matter in this episode.
I feel like we need to...
And then you slowly go into why LaForge is cool and why Yar is neat.
I feel like just get to it. They only have 10 episodes. This is less than the amount of episodes they have for Discovery, right? 10 episodes is not a lot of time. And we don't have time for each episode to have like an origin story for
every character.
Every character.
They don't.
I'm concerned they're gonna have like a Rios one, and I'm like freaking out. Like, don't, like, I love that character and he's new and everything, but
just
like,
let him be cool.
Do that season 2, like, delve into that later. You don't have to tell everybody's story to have them there. Just put them in there,
and let them be who they are.
And then let it play out. Tell us like what their title is, why they're there, and then give us the origin later.
The origin later would be good, but I do think that I mentioned earlier 2 podcasts ago that I like the fact that it took its time. For the first 2 episodes would have been enough. Picard's getting his bearings. There's some incident that happens. He meets Dodge. What's going on? Where is he? He's on his vineyard. And then we sort of eventually get onto a ship when we fly off into space on a mission.
But if you're going to spend all that time meeting his 2 Romulan compatriots and falling in love with how great they are, and then they're not in the show,
you should bring them along.
That is a waste of time.
That's probably true.
If they were like...
That's probably true.
If one of them was Rios...
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying real, but I'm saying if one of them was going to be like a pilot...
Yeah.
That would be good.
That's
but
probably
now we're
true.
like burning. Like, you're burning and burning. And then we're going to get to the end and we're going to be like, okay, maybe if it's good, if it's a payoff, we're going to be like, wow, I really wish I knew and hung out with that person longer.
That I agree with. He should have taken his Romulan friends on the road trip with him.
Well, they should have been written, what I mean?
To have the important skills necessary to be a part of this journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
I don't know that we're going to see them again.
There's a lot of... This episode to me feels like the waste of time I'm worried the whole show could be.
It's a possibility that this is like a pilot season.
Yeah.
Which is which would be very frustrating.
Because we've already been told...
For a character that is established.
Yeah, and we've been told that there are 3 years of this show max.
Yeah.
So
if we eat through season 1.
If we eat through season 1 just kind of learning a bit about some characters, this is going to be a colossal waste of time when you consider the first 2 hours of TNG. Encounter at Farpoint gives us a skeleton crew at the beginning. Then they go to Farpoint and meet 2 or 3 of their other crew members, and like the crew is assembled throughout the episode. And by the end of it, they're a team. They did that in 2 hours 30 years ago.
Yeah, and there was like a little bit of
good point.
Riker and Geordi know each other from the past, and we don't need to delve into that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Like, I like that.
Yeah. And Riker and Troy know each other because they used to, bone.
And it's like enough. And it's like just
it's enough. And they built the whole crew. That was the whole like senior crew. But
you meet Data and you can't really whistle. And it's like, this is intriguing. Oh, what's Data about?
And that's all you need to know. Yeah. And I feel like here we are.
A bit of McCoy.
4 hours. Yeah, and they even managed to give us McCoy in the episode. But here we are 4 hours into the show with 2 episodes that trekked it, 1 episode that wrecked it. Vanya, what did this episode do for you?
It trekked it, but just because some technicalities, but not because it's a great episode by any means.
So bad TV, but still
like I mean, I would say decent TV, bad Star Trek for level of Star Trek, but still trekked it.
What do you think?
Trekked it,
Really?
Yeah, actually. I mean, I appreciate the fact that we got to see Picard and his relationship with the kid. I appreciate the fact that we see that he's an outcast. When he goes to this relocation colony. I like this episode. I think it trekked it. I will say, and we touched about this off camera, is that it just feels like everybody in this Picard show wants to kick Picard in the balls.
Yep, everybody hates Picard.
It's like everybody.
But everybody has reason, though, in my opinion.
I mean, it would be great if one character who just said, "Hey, good to meet you, Picard. It's been a long time.
You saved reality 400 times."
Rios is that guy. He's the character.
But everybody's like, "What are you doing here, Picard? You got some nerve showing your face around these
You
parts."
saved the planet, the galaxy, the universe, the multiverse many times. You're ahead by the numbers. Some Romulans are dead. Yeah. Some people on Mars are dead.
It's like, stop shitting on this guy.
Picard is ahead by the numbers.
Listen. I don't mind him, like a character that's so revered and so, because you don't want, he has to have some kryptonite, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want him to be too perfect, and I don't want people to be bowing down to him too much, because I think I would get, like, sick of that. And so I feel like right now, Rios is the character, You know what I mean? And Girardi seems fine with him too. She's not pissed off at him. That's 2 out of like how many? The other people actually like
have good reason
to be pissed off. If they didn't have good reason, if they were just freaking out for no reason, I would be like, this is weird. But it's been laid out, the proof of how he's like been a dick to them.
But I just don't buy that he would be a dick to them. The character that we've known for all these years.
That's different. If you actually
don't write him as a dick. Picard is a caring dude. Like,
we know that he can be a dick.
He can be a dick.
He's not going to call you for 14 years. You worked with him closely. He got you fired.
This is not a man that is known for his great sensitivity.
He got you fired. You wouldn't call him, hey, how are you doing? Well, I'm living in a hovel.
He's a very closed-off person. If Sisko didn't call somebody for 14 years, that would not make sense.
But if Sisko was in a wormhole,
yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
There's a reason.
Like Sisko, as like if he's just around and he doesn't like try and contact you, make sure you're okay. That I would be like, that doesn't make sense to Sisko. But Picard has his ways of being sometimes, which can be closed off.
Yeah.
And
I mean, he's both French and British.
He's not a nasty person, but he's not a nasty person, and I don't think he would ever do it intentionally.
But this is a guy who would do anything for his friends. Like, he's demonstrated this over and over. He would do anything for his friends.
He cares so much about the death of Data. He has mourned him for 20 years. And I just find it
You wouldn't call her up, and how are you doing? Yeah. Like, since you lost your job because of me? In 14 years?
Unless there's guilt. Sometimes if someone has that kind of guilt, they pull back more because they're ashamed. You know what I mean? And I could see that happening.
Well, I mean, I'm alarmed that you guys both trekked this episode so easily, because to me this was like an okay episode of...
Not easily.
I was reluctant.
Not easily.
Well, to me this was like this episode was maybe an okay episode of Firefly. If it was The Mandalorian, I would want my money back.
I don't think I gave it easy, but
if it was... it's feeling a lot like Star Wars. To me, this was absolutely not Star Trek. Not Star Trek. Not only did they like mess up canon right in my face in the loudest, dumbest ways, they also were so inefficient with everything they did in this. It felt like a wild waste of my time.
That's so weird, because it's like it's even pacing didn't seem like Jonathan Frakes.
Yeah,
was the
like
director.
Frakes is better than this.
You know what? The last 5 minutes felt like Frakes directed this episode.
When there's like a space battle.
And how it ends.
Yeah.
Right? Like that, it's that kind of snappy finish is very much a Frakes kind of thing. But yeah, it was weird.
Yeah. And I must say the one thing that I enjoyed that to me made it worthwhile was when we found out that the criterion necessary for one of these Romulan samurai to bind their sword to a cause is that it is a lost cause.
It was hilarious.
I thought that was quite lovely. Yeah. The idea that if it's impossible, I'm there.
And I like that it was revealed after the fact.
That's right.
Right? That's a cool thing. I think those is kind of things like that made me trek it.
All right. Well, guys, let's find out next week what 7 of 9 brings to the table.
That's right.
And we'll find out if she can help them trek it. Let's hope. See you then.